Now,
I call the Marlington Local School District Board of Education regular meeting to order on June 25th, 2020 at 7:00 p.m. Mr. Knoll, would you please give our invocation?
sure will. You bow your heads, please. Father in heaven, we thank you for another beautiful day, Lord, with some rain and sunshine. We come to you tonight, as always, thankful that we're here to serve the staff, students, community here in Marlington. We ask tonight, Lord, you be with us in our decisions, our discussion, that they would all be pleasing to you. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
And to the republic
which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Humphries, would you read the mission statement?
Sure. In collaboration with staff, community, parents, and students, the Marlington Local School District will develop lifelong learners who understand and apply knowledge and demonstrate excellence in pursuing the highest standards with effective intervention to challenge every student.
This meeting is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. Mrs. Brugger, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Gabrick,
Here.
Mr. Hagan,
Here.
Mrs. Humphries,
Here.
Dr. Mason,
Here.
Mrs. Stevens.
Here.
Adoption of the meeting agenda. Are there any additions or corrections? I have a couple last minute corrections and I do apologize for that, but they came up at the last minute. We will strike in item 9A1 personnel for superintendent employment. That will be stricken. And in part 13, executive session, we'll strike the first paragraph regarding the investigation of charges. And to that same executive session area, we will add the following resolution. That there will be a motion for the Marlington Local School District Board of Education to recess into executive session pursuant to revised code 121.22G1 and House Bill 197 via secure virtual conference line for the purpose of considering the appointment, employment, and compensation of a new superintendent who is a public employee/official. All matters discussed in this executive session are designated to the public officials and employees as confidential pursuant to revised code 102.03B because of the status of the proceedings and or the circumstances under which the information will be received, and preserving its confidentiality is necessary to the proper conduct of government business. And in section 12, we will add discussion for setting a special meeting. Are there any other additions or corrections? Is there a motion for the Marlington Local Board of Education to adopt the following agenda for June 25th, 2020 meeting with the corrections and additions just given?
So move.
Your second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Gabrick,
Yes.
Mr. Hagan,
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries,
Yes.
Dr. Mason,
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens.
Yes.
Motion approved 5-0.
Special presentations. Mr. Knoll, are you taking care of that section?
Ms. Sutton's going to take care of the folk scholarship for us. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, everybody. The Folk Scholarship was established by Richard and Berdine Folk. They were residents and farmed in the New Baltimore area. Mrs. Folk was a former teacher at Marlboro Elementary, and they married in 1941, did not have any children. Mr. Folk donated $500,000 from their estate to honor his wife, Berdine. This donation was intended to establish a scholarship to benefit the children of Marlington. The overriding philosophy of the scholarship award is based on the principles of Mr. and Mrs. Folk: financial need, effort, potential, commitment, and perseverance. This year, we have 10 applicants for the spring. They are as follows: Sophia Blake, Austin Carper, Caitlin Englehart, Maggie Fellers, Andrew Grimes, Lauren Landon, Lauren Rogers, McKenna Ryan, Leah Springer, Sierra Thompson. All are receiving a scholarship amount of $600 apiece. We're very proud.
Thank you. Public participation. Mrs. Berger, did you receive any public participation for this meeting?
I did not.
Okay, so we'll move on. Is there any old business? And new business, Mr. Knoll, Mrs. Sutton, opening of the school year for 2020-21.
Let me try this again. Can you guys see that? You got it?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So I want to talk to you a little bit about some scenarios for the opening of school for next school year. So here's some things that we know. We have some guiding documents that are going to be very helpful. The first one is from the CDC, which talks about schools during the COVID-19 pandemic and what that needs to look like. We also have a document from the Ohio Department of Education in correspondence with the Ohio Department of Health and the Governor's Office called the Reset and Restart Planning Guide. As we sit here tonight, it is a draft, but we have been given some guidance that there will be an update soon. We're actually hoping that update we're going to see early next week. And we'll talk more about that as we go through the evening here. There's also a Big 8 a Health and Safety Coalition document, and then a Recovery Task Force guideline for schools as well. So some good documents that are out there just to kind of help with the conversation. Here's the CDC document. It's probably a little hard to see on the screen, but basically it just kind of talks about here's some things that you better have done before you can open your schools. It talks about, understanding the state and local orders. Are we ready to protect our kids, all our employees, especially those that are high risk? Do we have a way to do some screening? If you do, then you move on to the next column, which talks about healthy hygiene practices, basically coaching up our employees and our staff members and students, encouraging social distancing and a lot of training in health and safety protocols. If you meet all of those, then you move over to the next column. And basically this one talks about, do you have procedures in place to check for signs and symptoms? If people are sick, we need to encourage them to stay home, staff and students. What's the plan if that happens? The next one's communicating, being able to monitor absences, and also being able to connect with your local health authorities. So from the CDC's perspective, if you can meet all of those requirements, then you are allowed to go ahead, open, and kind of monitor what's going on. So the big document is this Reset and Restart Planning Guide. And I will say this, everything that we've heard over the last few weeks has been, these are just going to be guidelines, not mandates. Okay. So that's the first thing that we need to understand. So there's a couple different topics within the guide. And the first one talks about health and safety. And this is obviously a big one and a key one. All this information is being identified by the Ohio Department of Health and the Governor's Office. And the big deal here is to minimize the surge of any new COVID cases. And our local health departments are going to be huge. I know I've said this before, but they are going to be the ones helping us with our local decisions. And I just need to say this, Ms. Sutton, are you out there with me? Okay. How many years of education do you have in you?
I'm sorry?
How many years of education have you been doing this job?
23.
Okay. She has 23. I have 30 plus. So we've got 50 years of experience here in dealing with education between Ms. Sutton and I, and we're pretty smart people. We think we do a pretty good job. We wear a lot of hats. But one hat that I will never wear is the medical hat. I am always going to take the advice, the recommendations, the counsel from our professionals that do this for a living. And I think that's the important thing to do for every superintendent out there, in my opinion. So some key components to this guide. We're going to be required to teach our students health and safety precautions. This is good hand washing. This is when you cough, you cough into your arm, those types of things. We're going to be required to sanitize our environment before, during, and after school, which makes a lot of sense. That social distancing piece is going to be another key component. Symptom checks, fever, those types of things. And the decision is going to have to be, is that something that's done at home, or are we going to do that here at school? Limiting visitors. What we are hearing is that this is going to be a pretty important component. We want to make sure we don't have people coming in the building that we don't need to have. Signage is going to be huge as well. This could include things in classrooms, in our restroom facilities, in the hallways. Maybe we're going to end up having hallways that are just one way. If you've been to some of the stores, they have a little piece of tape on the floor, kind of like 6 feet apart. That's going to be big. And the other piece of the puzzle is going to be face coverings. And as we sit here tonight, my understanding is that's going to be highly encouraged to wear some type of face covering while at school. The second big component is the return to school considerations. And this is going to be interesting. This is how you're going to make your school day work, basically. We're going to be asked, I believe, to take a look at non-classroom spaces like your cafeteria, auditoriums, your gyms, areas that are big, that you could spread kids out and possibly use those for teaching and learning during the day. And also weather permitting outdoor areas as well, which makes a lot of sense. We're going to have to look at split schedules, like an AM or a PM, alternate days. Maybe you have kids come in for 2 days or 3 days, depending on the week. Staggered starts. Once again, the whole idea is just trying to have a whole bunch of kids congregating at one time. So, possibly maybe you have your drop-off families and kids come at one time, or buses would arrive a little bit later, just to kind of keep those kind of like a divide and conquer type thing there.
I apologize for interrupting, but I'm not seeing your presentation. I don't know if I'm the only one or if that's visible to everybody else.
Can you guys see it?
I can see it.
Okay. I'm sorry, Josh. I don't know what's going on there, bud.
Logging back in real quick.
Okay. Yep.
All right.
Thanks for asking. No problem. Another topic for discussion is use of buildings. Let's say, for example, we decide we're going to have remote learning for a middle school or high school, and those kids are going to be at home. Can you use those buildings for elementary kids? Can you use YMCAs? Can you use church buildings in your community? Those are all options that we're going to be asked to consider. And the other big one's transitions. I kind of mentioned that. Try to limit the amount of time that kids and staff members are in hallways or coming in and leaving school from entrance doors, exit doors. This could possibly look like kids staying in classrooms and teachers just moving classroom to classroom throughout the day to limit kids in the hallways. Those are things we're going to be asked to consider as well. The guidance that we're seeing thus far is field trips should be avoided as much as possible for obvious reasons. Something that's near and dear to my heart, as everybody in Marlington knows, is the social, emotional, physical, and behavior needs of our staff and students. That heartening piece, we're going to have to spend some time early on, I believe, just kind of getting to know some people, making more connections, and making sure we handle that. And then obviously the big piece of the puzzle is communicating our procedures, our practices, and what our day is going to look like to all of our stakeholders once those decisions are made. Some other considerations, I'll just say this. I believe every school district must have a remote learning game plan ready to go. Kind of like how we ended the school year, March, April, May, June. Everybody has to have something like that in place. And here's 2 reasons. I think no matter what we say here at Marlington, however we're going to start the year, we're going to have some parents that just aren't going to feel safe sending their kids to school for whatever reason. Could be health issues, could be grandparents at home, could be a situation like me and my family, as you all know. And the second scenario is there could come a day based on an outbreak where our local health department could say, you're shut down and you're going to have to go to a remote learning piece. Now, a couple things about Marlington that's great. Number one is our our involvement in technology basically saved us in the springtime. We didn't miss a beat. We were able to transition right to one-to-one at home and go at it. The second piece of the puzzle for parents, this is just a reminder. About 5 or 6 years ago, we started our Duke's Digital Academy. If we start school in a traditional way and parents say, you know what, I don't feel comfortable, this is an awesome option for Marlington parents. And when those decisions are made, if this is a situation where you feel, you know what, I want to know more about this, I'm sure we'll be setting up some contact information. But I want to make sure all of our parents know that this is an online digital academy where you're still the Duke, but you're able to do schoolwork at home. For the example that, let's say we start with like a traditional start to the school year. So a great option. Want to make sure our parents remember that. The third piece of the Restart Planning Guide talks about operations, and there's some big pieces to the puzzle here. And first one's transportation. We're going to be asked to disinfect between routes, talk about seating and how can we distance in seats. My thoughts are the first seat, you have a kid by the window, right behind them and in the aisle, then the window and the aisle, just to kind of divide as best you can. My other thoughts are when we enter the bus, the first kid on goes all the way to the back, and you fill the bus from back to front. And then when you're exiting to get out to school, you start with the front. So we don't have kids passing by one another up and down the aisle. There is a possibility the school districts could just say, hey, we're only going to bus certain grade levels because of that concern about too many kids and social distancing. Those are decisions that we're going to have to make. And then the symptom checks as well. Are we going to ask mom and pa at home to help us with that when it comes to temperatures and how you feeling today? Or is that something we're going to do here at the school? Another issue we're going to have to address. Cafeteria is another big one. Putting 100 and some kids in the cafeteria might not be a good way to social distance. So we're going to have to look at possibly meals in classrooms, trying to physical distance in that perspective, and then a lot of cleaning as well. Recess is another one mentioned in the guide. They are recommending that no playground equipment be used at all. So we're going to have to look and be creative of alternate recess activities that are still consistent with those health requirements as well. I believe we're going to see something like this come out as well. There was some talk about risk levels. I don't know if it's going to be these colors or not, but I just kind of use the colors of your traffic light. Green being there's low risk, there's little spread going on in your community, and or the positive cases are even decreasing. I put yellow in there as a moderate. Maybe we're flatlining or maybe just a tad bit of COVID cases in our area. High would be we're definitely seeing an increase in cases. That would be the orange, and red would be severe, where we have a huge spike over several days in our community. If you're yellow or orange, I could see us being directed to do maybe lesson or in-person instruction and have more of a remote learning piece involved. And obviously, if there's red, there's a good possibility that we will be mandated to close at that point, very similar to the spring. We're being told those designations are going to be determined by the local health departments, the Ohio Department of Health, and the governor's office to make those decisions, which, like I said, I'm happy about that. Those are the professionals. They're the ones that need to be driving those decisions. So just a few things in summary. Once again, we are being told that these are going to be guidelines, not necessarily mandates. We'll wait for the official document, hopefully, like I said, next week. Our local health departments are going to be critical in the decision making. And just so our community knows, at our superintendent meetings in Stark County, the local health department guys have been at every meeting, and they have been awesome. Huge impact, making good decisions, good information, a huge help for us. The part I like about all this, even as hard as this is going to be, there's going to be local decision making going on in districts. I think the governor wants to get out of the business of making statewide decisions because Northeast and Southwest Ohio could be totally different scenarios. So I believe he's going to put that more on the local people, which I'm okay with. This document is supposed to have two major components, the education obviously being the big one, and then the health part of it, which we were told has up to 10 pages, so it's going to be lengthy. And then, like I said, early next week, we're very hopeful that we'll get an updated planning guide, hopefully catch our breath, and then as districts start making some decisions on how we're going to start the school year. So that's all I had for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Student handbooks. Is there a motion to recommend to approve the student handbook, athletic handbook, and the Duke's digital handbook for the 2020-21 school year as presented and marked Exhibit RR, Exhibit SS, and Exhibit TT?
So moved.
Second,
Is there a second?
second.
Is there any discussion?
Can I ask her to leave the
Mr. Knoll
same?
or Mrs. Sutton, could you give us like a brief overview of what was, just if there was any changes in addition to the dates?
The few changes that were made were to dress code, basically at the high school level. That was all.
Any other discussion? Please call the roll.
Sorry. Mrs. Gabrick,
Yes.
Mr. Hagan,
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries,
Yes.
Dr. Mason,
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens.
Yes.
Motion approved 5-0.
Is there a motion to approve the increase in food service prices, which is breakfast, all schools, $1.25, elementary lunch from $2.50 to $2.60, high school and middle school lunch from $2.75 to $2.85?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Katie, could you go over this briefly on, just give us an overview of the situation?
Oh, sure. This is related to the decline in food service balance. It's one of the recommendations Joe and I are bringing forward to help with that. And included a report in Dropbox that sort of went over that. So you can see how expenditures have exceeded revenues over the past couple years. It's just one of the areas that in discussing with our food service manager that she thought might be helpful to help with the issues.
Could you clarify on the breakfast, is that an increase or is that the same?
I believe, and Joe, you can probably help more with this. He's got a little more history on this, but I don't think the district for the elementaries had free. Joe, what was the situation with free breakfast? It wasn't the same across the district.
Yeah,
or
he's making it the same across the board at all the levels, elementary, middle school, and high school. Yeah.
Any other discussion or questions? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Gabrick,
Yes.
Mr. Hagan,
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries,
Yes.
Dr. Mason,
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens.
Yes.
Motion approved 5-0.
Mr. Knoll, do you want to present the Marlboro contracts and give a brief overview?
Sure can. I'd like to recommend a motion to approve First Choice Electric for the Marlboro electrical contract as presented and marked Exhibit UU.
Is there a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Knoll, do you want to give just a brief overview of that?
Yeah, so we had First Choice kind of help us with the lighting, the fixtures themselves. And now this is the part where doing the install and doing all the electrical work that kind of goes around it. So at the end of the day, which is really a good thing for us, they not only supply the material, but they're doing the install and updates and all that as well.
Are there any questions or discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Gabrick,
Yes.
Mr. Hagan,
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries,
Yes.
Dr. Mason,
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens.
Yes.
Motion approved 5-0.
Okay, I'd like to recommend a motion to approve RT Hampton for the Marlboro mechanical contract as presented and marked Exhibit VV.
Is there a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation?
So move.
Second.
Mr. Knoll, if you could give a brief overview of this as well?
Sure. So this is the install for the HVAC units. And personally, I was ecstatic that RT Hampton got the job. They did the work here at the high school, did amazing work on time, budget, etc. And once again, I call them a local group from Stark County as well. So excited to get them on board for that HVAC install.
Is there any questions or discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Gabriel,
Yes.
Mr. Hagan,
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries,
Yes.
Dr. Mason,
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens.
Yes.
Motion approved 5-0.
Is there a motion to approve a resolution to administer paper versions of the state assessments to third grade students during the 2021 school year as presented and marked Exhibit WW?
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Sutton, is this your area, and you could go over this maybe briefly?
Briefly, basically, in years past, we've assessed our students in third grade. They are the only set of students to take a fall Ohio State test, and we've done that electronically because our students have had 6 weeks or 8 weeks before the test to become familiar with technology, and they've had the spring to become familiar with technology prior to them entering third grade. Our students entering third grade will not have had that opportunity because of COVID and our situation stay-at-home order. And we are fearful that moving into the fall, if we would have some sort of hybrid model or we would not be in full attendance face-to-face, that they would not have that experience with the technology. We want to assess their knowledge with English language arts and reading, not have technology be the barrier to that. So reluctantly, we are requesting to be providing them with a paper test.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Gabriel,
Yes.
Mr. Hagan,
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries,
Yes.
Dr. Mason,
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens.
Yes.
Motion approved 5-0.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the following meetings? Regular meeting, June 4th, special meeting, June 8th, special meeting, June 10th, special meeting, June 12th, emergency meeting, June 18th, special meeting, June 22nd.
So
So
moved.
moved. Second.
Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Gabriel,
Yes.
Mr. Hagan,
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries,
Yes.
Dr. Mason,
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens.
Yes.
Motion approved 5-0.
Is there a motion to approve the financial reports and overview of receipts and expenditures for the period ending May 31st, 2020 as presented and marked Exhibit XX and Exhibit YY?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Mrs. Berger, do you want to just go over this?
Sure. In the reports, you'll see the financial summary, which is a summary of all fund activity for the month of May. The fin sum ends with a current balance of around 10 million. This report ties into the bank reconciliation where we show our investments and reconcile that to our bank statements. And the check report showing all checks written for the month of May.
Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Gabriel? I'm sorry.
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Hagan?
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries?
Yes.
Dr. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens?
Yes.
Motion approved 5-0.
Is there a motion to approve the final amended appropriations for fiscal year 2020 as presented and marked Exhibit ZZ?
So moved.
Is there a
Second.
second? Mrs. Berger, could you give us an overview of this?
Sure. This report deals with the fiscal year 20 budget that we submit to the county auditor. It's sort of closing out the year. And the amendments were made to bring the amounts down to actual spend or close to actual spend in case of any additional emergency expenditures in the last 4 days of the year. So, you always got to plan for anything. So,
Is there any discussion or questions? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Gabrick,
Yes.
Mr. Hagan,
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries,
Yes.
Dr. Mason,
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens.
Yes.
Motion approved 5-0.
Is there a motion to approve the financial amended certificate for fiscal year 2020 and as presented and marked Exhibit AAA?
So move.
Second.
Mrs. Bruger, would you like to go over this one?
Sure. This is, for lack of a better term, the revenue budget. It's also submitted to the county auditor. It's for fiscal year 2020, closing out the year, and it coincides with the appropriations.
Is there any discussion?
I think the labeling is wrong on the last two. They're just backwards. This one is labeled as ZZ versus AAA. The amended certificate and the final appropriations are backwards, at least on my copy.
Oh, we're the attachment.
Yeah. The top where it says attachment ZZ versus AAA, those two are just backwards. Okay.
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 I'll have those.
Yep.
switched over to the
Thanks,
final.
Doc. Appreciate that. Good catch.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Gabrick,
Yes.
Mr. Hagan,
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries,
Yes.
Dr. Mason,
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens.
Yes.
Motion approved 5-0.
Is there a motion to approve the resolution establishing the permanent appropriations for fiscal year 2021 as presented and marked Exhibit BBB?
So move.
So moved.
Is there a
Second.
second?
Second.
Mrs. Bruger, could you provide an overview of this?
Sure. This sets the budget for fiscal year 21. It's similar to item 2 that was approved, only it's for fiscal year 21. The general funds based off of the values from the 5-year forecast, and it can be brought back throughout the year for amendments as needed, as you've seen throughout the year this year.
Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Gabrick,
Yes.
Mr. Hagan,
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries,
Yes.
Dr. Mason,
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens.
Yes.
Motion approved 5-0.
Is there a motion to approve the amended certificate for fiscal year 2021 as presented and marked Exhibit CCC?
So move.
Second.
Mrs. Bruger, could you please go over this one also?
Certainly. This is the revenue budget for fiscal year 2021, similar to the revenue budget for fiscal year 2020, just the following year. And this is the update to coincide with the corresponding appropriations.
Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Gabrick,
Yes.
Mr. Hagan,
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries,
Yes.
Dr. Mason,
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens.
Yes.
Motion approved 5-0.
Is there a motion to approve the following donations for May 2020? And those are Buckeye Packaging Company, donation to the Marlington High School for Academic Recognition Committee for $70. Judith Leiber Glasser, donation to the high school for the John Leiber Scholarship Fund, $250. David and Raven Huppridge, donation to Marlington High School for the Ashley White Stump Scholarship Fund, $100. Scott and Dawn Highland, donation to Marlington Local School District, $100. Nancy Leiber, donation to the John Leiber Scholarship, $250. William Leiber, donation to the John Leiber Scholarship for $500. And the Marlington Athletic Booster Club, donation to the high school for $21,500.
So move.
Second.
Is there any discussion? I would like to thank all of our donors for their generous donations. Please call the roll. You're muted.
Sorry.
Except-
Mr. Mrs. Gabriel,
Yes.
Mr. Hagan,
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries,
Yes.
Dr. Mason,
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens.
Yes.
Motion approved 5-0.
Is there a motion to approve the interfund transfers as presented on the final fiscal year 20 PI and capital budget fund worksheet as presented and marked exhibit DDD?
So move.
Second.
Mrs. Brugger, could you go over the interfund transfers?
Sure. These are the transfers within the PI fund to balance out small negatives. As I've seen, this has been done before, just to keep balance within the fund. And it was projected in my last fund update that we would have these, and I would bring these forward just to kind of close out the year and tidy everything up. So here it is.
Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Gabrick,
Yes.
Mr. Hagan,
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries,
Yes.
Dr. Mason,
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens.
Yes.
Motion approved 5-0.
Is there a motion to approve the activity purpose clause budget statements for the 2021 school year as presented and marked exhibit EEE?
So
So
moved.
move. Second.
Mrs. Berger, if you could give us an overview of these statements?
Sure. These are done annually for those that are in charge of certain funds to help them with budget creation and also foster accountability within these activity funds. They also help with creation of the budget and appropriations that you saw earlier.
Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Gabrick,
Yes.
Mr. Hagan,
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries,
Yes.
Dr. Mason,
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens.
Yes.
Motion approved 5-0.
Is there a motion to approve the following fund to fund transfer fund from Fund 001 to Fund 006 in the amount of $101,084? Well, I don't know, what's,
Oh,
and 432 cents. I'm not sure what that is.
43 cents, but who couldn't do this?
So moved.
Uh,
Pending correction.
Second.
Who was the second again?
Mason.
Mason. All right.
And Katie, could you give us the details of the fund-to-fund transfer?
Sure. As we discussed before, there's been a fund balance decrease over the last couple years in Fund 006, and Joe and I and the food service director have been working on ways to help correct that issue. And so this is the amount that the fund went into the negative this year. And so this is the amount needed to transfer to correct that issue.
And is that a one-year correction, or you said that was a couple years of a correction?
This is the current amount that it went into the negative this year. Over the last couple years, if you look on that food service report that I put in Dropbox, it's been declining. The cash balance has been declining. This is the first year that it actually went negative. So, and we can't have funds in the negative at year end. So the transfer is necessary.
Is there any
Fund
discussion?
Fund 001 is what? The general?
Fund 001 is our general fund.
Please call the roll.
Mrs. Gabrick,
Yes.
Mr. Hagan,
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries,
Yes.
Dr. Mason,
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens.
Yes.
Motion approved 5-0.
Under personnel, Mr. Knoll, do you want to make these recommendations, please?
Sure. I'd like to recommend motion to hire the following with a 1-year limited contract beginning with the 2020-21 school year, pending verification and satisfactory credentials, BSA and FBI checks as required. Those individuals as presented. Under classified, recommend motion to accept the resignation of Laura Lipford as a latchkey supervisor and cafeteria playground monitor effective immediately. I'd like to recommend the motion to accept the resignation of Rebecca Baumann as latchkey supervisor and cafeteria playground monitor effective immediately as well. Under classified hires, recommend motion to hire the following with a 1-year limited contract beginning with 2020-21 school year, pending verification and satisfactory credentials, BCI and FBI checks as required. Those individuals as presented. Under summer help, recommend motion to accept the resignation of Kyle Bear as summer horticulture help effective June 10, 2020. And recommend motion to hire Steph Nutter for summer horticulture help effective immediately. And then under supplementals, I'd like to recommend a motion to hire the following pending verification of their satisfactory credentials, BCI and FBI checks as required, and subject to the following. In the event that athletic season is suspended or canceled, students do not participate in co-curricular or extracurricular pupil activity programs, and or individuals are not specifically assigned in writing by the superintendent to perform supplemental duties under Ohio Revised Code 3313.53 and applicable laws during the 2021 school year. The Marlington Local School District Board of Ed, the board, hereby suspends any and all such supplemental contracts and directs the treasurer to make any payment whatsoever to any individual in connection with such supplemental contracts. Any individual who performs any supplemental duties in violation of this resolution shall be deemed to have done so volunteer only and shall not be paid for any such volunteer services. And we're going to recommend all of those supplementals, all 4, 5 pages, 6 pages, as presented.
Is there a motion to accept the superintendent's recommendations for personnel?
So moved.
Well, there's 3 that time.
Second.
All right. Mr. Hagan, second, right? Okay.
Mason was second.
Oh, Doc was? Okay, thank you.
And is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Gabrick?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Mr. Hagan?
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries?
Yeah.
Dr. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens?
Yes.
Motion approved 5-0.
Are there any announcements?
No, I won't have any. Right.
The board is going to need to have a special meeting for the purpose of considering the appointment, employment, and compensation of a new superintendent. And I just, it should be probably sometime either Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Monday, if any of those days would work for anyone. We can do a remote meeting.
I would be fine with Monday if that would work with everyone else.
I'm not available on Monday, but I don't need to be in those discussions. So,
Sorry, Katie.
I mean, as long as you're okay with appointing Joe again, that's
Fine.
I thought I did a pretty good job, just for the record.
he
Mr. Knoll did do a pretty good job, Katie.
Except when you were.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, I said that at the end. My mic wouldn't come on, but that was fine. Doc took over for me.
I would prefer Monday as well.
So we're going,
Monday.
Monday's okay? And
Monday.
what time?
Early as possible. I mean, 6:30 seems to be the starting time. Is that good?
6:30?
Yeah.
Okay, Monday at 6:30. And then the next regular meeting is July 2nd at 7 p.m.
I'll be honest with you, Ms. Gabrick, we're not going to have very much in a week on our end. I don't know if there's anything else pressing by anybody that,
I don't know that I'll have much on the 2nd either.
you won't.
Enough this meeting.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, we had a lot tonight.
Did you go to the 15th?
Will there be any hires that need to take place or any anything like that?
Well, yeah. I mean, as far as on our end, I think we did just about everybody tonight. Miss Sutton, am I forgetting anybody?
I have title tutors that can be hired.
Okay. That could wait till the 16th. If we,
Okay.
I mean,
Sure.
can we? I don't know. Is that a pressing one?
If you say it can wait till the 16th, it can wait till the 16th.
Okay.
I think he was asking.
Yeah.
What does the board have any business they need to consider next Thursday?
It depends on how our superintendent search goes. There may be something or there may not. So is there any way we could, if there's by then, we could cancel it coming up
Sure.
on that date?
Yeah, we could keep it and cancel it if we don't need it. Sure.
Or it can only be canceled at a meeting for a regular meeting.
Oh,
You couldn't cancel it
That's
on
right.
Monday?
Or we could cancel it on Monday, that's true. But we'd have to add it to the agenda and the meeting announcement to discuss it.
Yeah, that's the only option I would say you have.
So wait till Monday
Okay.
to discuss that.
That'll work.
Katie, can you add that to the agenda that we will also be discussing whether we need to hold that regular meeting on the 2nd
Joe,
and the
you
meeting
gonna,
announcement?
Joe, you gonna add that to your agenda?
What's that?
Joe, you gonna add that to your agenda?
No, that's the treasurer's agenda. I got it. We'll be all right.
Executive session. The Marlington Local School District Board of Education shall recess into executive session for the purpose of considering confidential information related to the marketing plans, specific business strategy, production techniques, trade secrets, and/or personal financial statements of an applicant for economic development assistance and/or negotiations with other political subdivisions respecting requests for economic development assistance, since the information is directly related to a request for economic development assistance that is to be provided or administered under Revised Code 5709.40 to Revised Code 5909.43. And a unanimous quorum of the board hereby directs by roll call vote that the executive session is necessary to protect the interests of the applicant and/or the possible investment of or expenditure of public funds to be made in connection with the economic development project. All matters discussed in this executive session are designated to the public officials and employees as confidential pursuant to Revised Code 102.03B because of the status of the proceedings and/or circumstances under which the information will be received, and preserving its confidentiality is necessary to the proper conduct of government business. And additionally, the motion will include the Marlington Local School District Board of Education will recess into executive session pursuant to Revised Code 121.22G1 and House Bill 197 via a secure virtual conference line for the purposes of considering the appointment, employment, and compensation of a new superintendent who is a public employee / official. All matters to discuss in this executive session are designated to the public officials and employees as confidential pursuant to Revised Code 102.03B because of the status of the proceedings and/or circumstances under which the information will be received, and preserving its confidentiality is necessary to the proper conduct of government business. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
second.
Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Gabrick,
Yes.
Mr. Hagan?
Yeah.
Mrs. Humphries?
Yeah.
Dr. Mason,
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens.
Yes.
Motion approved 5-0.
And if you can exit out of the public, close out of the public portion of this meeting and join on the Zoom invitation that was sent to you earlier. We're declared out of executive session at 8:43. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Gabrick,
Yes.
Mr. Hagan,
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries,
Yes.
Dr. Mason,
Yes.
Mrs. Stevens.
Yes.
Motion approved 5-0.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.
All
everyone.
Good night.
Good night, Ben.
Good night, Josh.